With the new Tier 2 blueprint designer in Satisfactory 1.0, it occurred to me that perhaps we could squeeze an all-in-one blueprint nuclear fuel rod facility together, and spoiler, it is very much doable and can produce enough fuel rods to run 10 nuclear plants per minute. Not bad for a single click. So today I'm going to break down how to create this particular blueprint so that you can use it in your factories. But before we have a meltdown, I would like to say a huge thank you to Star Trek Fleet Command for sponsoring today's video, which will see you taking to the stars in iconic ships, recruiting legendary characters like Picard and Riker as you vie for control over the galaxy with regular space battles. Repair and upgrade your fleet, develop your space station and control your sector in this free-to-play game on PC and mobile, so use my link in the description or scan the QR code on screen. Better yet, now is the perfect time to join as they're celebrating their 6th anniversary with the exciting Q Continuum event, which sees you exploring the independent archives, helping you unlock powerful chaos tech. And of course, you can expect to see Q in one of his many forms as an officer to recruit. With over 20 new side missions, avatars and tech, make sure to log in for the 7-day streak, giving away a bundle of rewards every day for new players, including the infamous Captain Nero who destroyed Vulcan. But there's more. Use my link in the description or scan the QR code to download the game for free and use the promo code CRUSHERS to get 2 full officer unlocks as well as the jellyfish once you hit Op 18 for free. And this offer is available until January the 15th. So what are you waiting for? Starfleet needs you today. Beaming back to Massage 2 ABB, I'll be splitting this build into 3 sections for ease of understanding. Now you can pause the video now if you want to copy the placement, but I will be covering all of that shortly. Now for this build you will need 3 alternate recipes, the first being infused uranium cells, the second encased industrial pipes, and finally the quick wire stator. Now if you are struggling to unlock the recipes, do check out my guide on alternate recipes in 1.0, which I'll link in the description below. It has some great tips just to get you started and to help you unlock recipes quicker. On top of this, you will also need 16 power shards, and should you wish to double up the production, a total of 4 Summersloop. This setup does consume a total of 1.2 gigawatts to get started, but if you are running the fully Summerslooped lines, you will be producing a whopping potential of 25 gigawatts of power per minute from this. And as with all of our blueprint guides, though I show you how to build this, if you do want to save yourself a few minutes of building, you can find this blueprint along with all my others over on Patreon. Let's get started. The first section is responsible for receiving all of the resources for the build. This includes 62.5 uranium per minute, 62.5 sulfur, 22.5 raw quartz, 45 limestone, and the following ingots: 68.75 Caterium, 50 copper, and 49.5 steel. And honestly, as long as you balance the uranium that's coming in, you don't really need to worry about getting the perfect ratio of all the other ingredients. Just make sure you have a little bit more and you can oversaturate everything except for the uranium, which will then run perfectly without becoming irradiated, because you still want to be able to walk around this build. So let's start off with the bottom layer. For this build, I am using a 2-meter foundation for the ground floor, and once built, we'll focus on the left side of the build in row and column 1. You'll need a 2 conveyor wall. Starting from the corner, the first conveyor line will be for copper, and the second for Caterium. In column 1, row 2, you'll need a 3 conveyor wall. The first conveyor will run the raw quartz, the second sulfur, and the third uranium. And in column 2, row 1, against the bottom edge of our build, I've used a gate hole wall. This is where we'll be entering the build. And next to that, in the third column, a single conveyor wall. This is for your steel. And the fourth column also has a single conveyor hole for for your uranium fuel cells. In the top right corner of the build, along the right edge, you'll need another wall hole conveyor. This is for your limestone, and that's it in terms of the conveyor walls that you'll need for the inputs. You can then box the rest of this off. With that in mind, place a manufacturer now facing the right of the build in the top left hand corner. Now it does need to be 1 meter away from the top edge, and it will be half a foundation into the first column. This manufacturer will produce the infused uranium cells at 250% overclock. And directly against the manufacturer's lower edge, we're going to place a constructor facing to the left of the build. This should be placed in the center of the column 1 and 2 so that its output can feed directly into the manufacturer's input. This will produce silica at 100% clock speed with its output running into the manufacturer. For the next 2 manufacturer inputs, run the uranium and the sulfur lines that we're bringing in from the conveyor wall hole above the constructor line and down into the manufacturer. The quick wire will come from the top floor in the last section, so we'll do that in a little bit. Just beware, you'll need an elevator heading down the build for that. Next, place a second manufacturer with its output next to the conveyor wall hole in the 4th column. This will be producing the uranium fuel cells at 250% clock speed, and if you have the summer sloop available, I highly recommend doubling your production. Now at the top of this grid, 1 meter from the right edge in the 4th and 5th row, we have a constructor which will be producing concrete at 100% clock speed. Now I'm going to attach a floor plan marking the elevators with conveyor floor holes so that you can see where everything's going to go up and down. Most of these do move between floors, but this particular elevator goes up just 8 places high to the roof, and then facing the left of the build, we're going to run a conveyor of concrete using the straight belt mode to the floor hole, which is located in the center of column 2 and 3 in the 1st row, where it will then feed up into the next floor's encased pipe assembly line. Now we're going to bring Quickwire down the top left corner of the build to feed into the manufacturer. Electromagnetic control rods will come down from the 2nd floor 1 meter from the top edge in the 4th column, running directly into the fuel cell manufacturer, and the uranium encased cells will also feed directly into this manufacturer as well. Finally, we will take the Caterium up to the top floor and the copper and steel up to the 2nd floor. Now, if you would like to run a walkway through the build like I've done, you can do this by placing a catwalk stairs up from the left edge of the 3rd column, winding to the left when it reaches the manufacturer in front, and then you can proceed up in a U shape. The 1st floor will be 15 meters high. Above this, place a 1 meter high foundation across the 2nd floor, and this is where I'm going to add in all of my conveyors and elevator floor holes. With our 2nd floor ready, you'll already have the majority of conveyor floor holes placed, so we'll start with the 3 constructors. These will be placed starting 1 meter from the left edge, spanning the 4th and 5th row. Now the first constructor's top left foot should be placed just below the conveyor floor hole for the quick wire. The reason the constructors are all being placed 1 meter from the edge is to avoid the arms clipping through the wall during their animation, but you could, if you want, move them over. It's just something that I prefer to do. Now the first constructor will be producing the copper sheets at 250% clock speed. I'm running the ingots from the bottom left hand corner, and as it's a really tight turn, I'm going to be using a splitter instead of just a normal corner so that it can run directly into the constructor along a straight line between the elevator and the constructor. Now the next 2 constructors will produce steel pipes, with the first constructor running at 90% clock speed and the second at 75%. And before we run the conveyor lines, we will place the assemblers for this, just because it's easier. Now first, place an assembler flush against the floor hole in the 4th column and row. The right input should be over the edge of the 4th and 5th columns, and rows. Now this assembler will produce the electromagnetic control rods at 125% clock speed, with the output heading to the manufacturer below. Leading into this assembler's right input, we're also going to place another assembler. This assembler will naturally be placed centered across the edges of the 4th and 5th column. To get the right position, you do have to have the upper base frames of the bottom part of the assembler bridge across the 1st and 2nd row. So just make sure that it looks like this. This assembler will produce AI limiters at 100% clock speed, and then to the left of this we're going to place another assembler producing the quick wire stator running at 93.8% clock speed, and then feed its output into the electromagnetic control rod assembler. Then to the left of this we are going to place another assembler, and this one's going to be producing the encased industrial pipes at 75% clock speed. Now do make sure to connect the concrete from the floor below with this assembler's input, and then next we are going to place a splitter facing to the right of the build in front of the first steel pipe constructor. Run the steel ingots line from the 3rd column up and around the encased industrial assembler into that splitter, splitting the steel between the 2 constructors. From here, run the 2nd steel pipe constructor around the factory floor to the stator assembler. Now I am using splitters and elevators to keep the lines tight and compact, but you can do this whichever way you want. And above this we're going to run the 1st steel pipes constructor line around the floor to the encased industrial pipe assembler. And then finally we'll run the copper sheet output above both these lines to the AI limiter assembler, and at this point we can run the encased industrial beams from the assembler up over the factory and then bring it down alongside the AI limiter conveyor. This will then feed into the fuel cell manufacturer on the 1st floor below. Continuing the catwalk stairs up to the right once against the Caterium elevator, and then we'll head up and above the assemblers to the top floor. This floor should be 11 meters high with a 1 meter foundation spanning above it for the top floor. On this floor you will have 3 constructors placed spanning the edge of 1st and 2nd and 3rd and 4th column in the 3rd and 4th row. These will be all set to quickwire, and from left to right the 1st constructor should be overclocked to produce 137.5 quickwire per minute. The 2nd constructor should run at 250% clock speed, and finally the 3rd constructor should run at 93.75% clock speed. Now we're going to feed the line using a manifold, but we'll balance the output lines. So place a merger in front of the 1st constructor's output. This will run to the top left-hand floor hole, leading to the manufacturer on the 1st floor. Now we'll then place a splitter in front of the 2nd constructor output, with the left output feeding 50 quickwire to the 1st constructor's merger, and the other 2 outputs will be merged together before running to the AI limiter's elevator floor hole. The 3rd constructor will run its output directly to the quick wire stator's assembler conveyor hole, and there you are. That's pretty much all of this done. At this point I will quickly mention that make sure you're running the right speed belts for the build. If you've got over 150 items on a belt, you know that you're going to need at least a tier 3 belt. But all that's left to do with this particular build is connect all the power points together so that everything's powered. I've done this by running power along the beams of each factory's floor's roofs, which I'll show you now, and then add lighting as you see fit. Once done, add the resources and you're ready to go. Now, if you'd like to see me do a similar factory for uranium waste recycling, let me know in the comments below and perhaps we'll get started on that. But we shall leave it there for today. Again, a huge thank you to today's sponsor, Star Trek Fleet Command. Do make sure to join the Federation. The link is in the description below. And of course, thank you to all of our amazing Patreons, most notably our Lunas, Firefless, Ben, the Calamity, and Star, as well as our Blood Moon of the day, which today is King Zoron. Until next time, As always, ciao for now.